So I'm sure you've heard the advice that you should playtest your game. Like, make sure you have playtesters check out your game before you get too far in development. So about a month ago, I decided that it was my turn to let some of my close friends try my game, the Steps of Divynia. And while I was hoping for an overwhelmingly positive response, what actually ended up happening changed my approach to game design and game development moving forward. So, what actually happened? Well, the players ended up finding a bug where if they were to go do the dash attack, and if they were to push the A button right as that animation started, it would end up propelling them forward and they would just kind of shoot off into the distance. Even more, if they were to chain those events, it would just go faster and faster and faster and faster. And they could really just go really flying through the level. And as each player found this bug, I would tell them, oh, yeah, that's actually not supposed to be in the game. It's just a bug, and I'll have to fix it later. To which their response would be, fix it? Why in the heck would you fix this? This is really fun. You should totally add this for the main game. And each time a player would say that, each time I would get smaller and smaller and smaller. The reason was because I had mixed feelings about this response. On the one hand, I was really glad that my players seemed to be enjoying this random bug that they ended up finding. But on the other, I started thinking, man, if I were to add this to the game, players could really just skip through a lot of the levels and get through things very quickly to the point where they wouldn't even notice a lot of the hard work and effort that I've put into the game. That's when I realized one of the harsh realities of game dev. Game dev is really, really hard. And I don't mean it's hard in the way that you need to know a lot of different things in order to even get to this point in development, or that you have to have a lot of stamina, vigor, and constitution. Like, I mean, have you checked the RPG stats of a game developer, especially an indie solo developer? Like, I feel like they have to be extraordinarily high in order to just get anything accomplished, because you have to make a lot of tough decisions, and there's no right or wrong answer when you're doing this. And so every little step that you take forward, it's like, did I make the right decision? Or is this actually going to work? And then what you end up finding is that 90% of what you do ends up failing. Because you see, that whole entire point of doing that early prototype was to see what players thought about the character movement, to see what they thought about the jumping, to see how they felt about the attacking. And honestly, no one mentioned anything about that unless I asked. That ultimately means one of two things. One, since they didn't complain about it, that means it's acceptable, which is good. Or the fact that they didn't mention it means it wasn't good enough and that I failed in those areas. And that's not even considering the fact that what the heck am I gonna do with this bug? Well, for me personally, I ended up thinking back to a quote, "The great game mechanics should not be found through design. They should be found through play." And with that frame of mind, what I decided works best for me is that I should include that mechanic in my game. Maybe not in a way to where it requires such a strict timing, or in a way that allows players to keep gaining momentum as they move forward, but ultimately, who am I to tell the players how they should or should not play my game? And that thought changed everything for me. I struggle a lot with change. Usually, when my mind has made something up, when it comes to something creative, such as game dev, it becomes incredibly hard for me to see an alternative path. Like, my mind will literally sit down and wage war with itself as it tries to shut down. One side will be over there saying, "But this doesn't make any sense. Why are we doing this?" As the others say, "Oh, it totally makes sense. You're just not seeing the big picture." And honestly, that's what I'm finding is that's very detrimental to my game as a whole. So with all that being said, what about the other two mistakes? Well, one of them was like a super big reality check. I mean, it was like I got ran over by a truck, and then as I was getting up, the truck decided to reverse back over me to see if I was okay. I provided too much visual stimulation for the player. I was under the impression that I should, at all times, make it obvious where the player is, what kind of context they're in, where they should go next, and, well, it resulted in this. I mean, look at this. Where do your eyes even go? Where do they belong in a situation like this? So, I had to take a step back, as one of the playtesters mentioned, that I needed to have a focal point and have things progress in a way that makes sense and that the player's eyes could follow without confusion. And with that reality check, it made me realize that as a game developer and as a YouTuber, I know very little. I mean, it's easy when we're stuck in our own little bubble to be like, oh yeah, I'm totally really good at this, and to think that we're going to impress the world with what we've created. The problem I have with my own YouTube videos or other YouTube videos is that they are designed to speak to a broad audience and in a broad sense about things and experiences that may or may not be right for a certain individual, and that's why I feel like it's really important to define success, because I feel like as game developers, we often focus way too much on the output and not our own input that we're putting in. Because you see, I realize that even though I've been doing game dev now for a few years, although one could argue only seriously in the past 5 months, that I honestly don't really know what I'm doing, or I really don't know what the best way something is, and that everything that I say or suggest is just an opinion based on what I currently know and hold to be true. And as for the second mistake, well, let's just say I had a ooh, pretty crystal make lights situation where, well, I placed a crystal on the same layer as the player, and when I did that as a source of lights, and well, when the players came across them, they would try to collect them and then get confused, maybe even aggravated when they couldn't. And they would say, hey, why can't I pick this up? To which my response would be, it's not what I intended. I had put those there as a way to kind of help light up the scene in a way that would make sense. But I didn't account for the fact that something like that, shining, glowing crystal, seems collectible, like something that the player should interact with. All of this is to say that one lesson that's come from all of this is that I have a super big ego problem. I mean, seriously, I didn't even know what an ego problem looked like or what aspects constitute as an ego problem until I looked it up for this video. And then right there, center, one of the very first things is stop beating yourself up. And I realized that throughout this whole entire process, even with the Why I Failed video, it was just constant, better, beating myself up, not good enough. You know, you gotta do this, you gotta do that. And remember, one of the very first things I said in this video was, and while I was hoping for an overwhelmingly positive response, that too was ego roaring its head, saying that, hey, the only way that you'll be liked and that you'll have meaning if you can just produce something that people can enjoy, and that is going to be tied to your self-worth, and this whole big mental mess that just honestly makes me feel like I'm going to explode. All that's to say, I'm going to focus on the mistakes and how I can grow from them. The fact that I feel like I haven't put enough out there into the world to even know what's what means that I need to put more out, fail more, and see what works and what doesn't. By the way, I'm still hard at work on the Steps of Divynia. In fact, just a few months ago, I updated the Steam page to make it look a lot more presentable. So, if you're interested in the game, please consider wishlisting it, and thank you for supporting me, and finding that it's super important to like what you create, regardless of what other people think, what they say, because ultimately, you've got to enjoy your own game. You're the one making it. I couldn't think of trying to make a game that didn't work for me or just felt boring when I played it. Second, the problem of an ego is extremely hard to get over. So if you too struggle with ego problems like I do, be kind to yourself. Be accepting that it's probably going to take a while to change, to get over that kind of mentality. And finally, realize that it's okay to slow down and get more experience. You know, sometimes I feel like I'm in this race of I have to have all of these mechanics done before the game conference in April, which means that I need to try and find a publisher by the end of this year, which also means that I need to present a demo to the public sometime early next year. And while guidelines are great and can help be a good source of a motivator, it doesn't do you no good if you don't have the experience to back it up. So get the experience first, and the deadlines can come in time. Anyway, speaking of slowing down and taking things a bit more seriously and not letting ego get in the way, there's a couple of changes that I want to make to this YouTube channel. First of all, when I put out the poll to see what kind of programming tutorials people would prefer, I was doing it from a means of wanting to be liked. I was hoping that if I did the thing that people liked the most, that I could be accepted as a proper YouTuber. And while I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with helping other people out, this isn't the best way for me to go about it. This channel is more about game dev motivation, game dev mistakes, and failures such as this and devlogs, not actual tutorials on how to program. Instead, there are far better YouTubers that do that. Therefore, I'm not going to do any more of the Godot tutorials. It just doesn't feel right to keep doing something that isn't aligned with my overall goals and intentions. Second of all, I've been uploading videos bi-weekly, and while that worked last semester when I was teaching, I just don't know if it's going to be viable this semester. Not to mention that I want to learn a lot more about Adobe After Effects and Adobe Premiere Pro itself so I can make better content and better videos for you. Therefore, I'm thinking of moving to a monthly schedule rather than a bi-weekly one, so that way I can have more time to come up with ideas to make these videos and hopefully just have better content all around. Anyway, that's going to be it for me in this video. If you found anything in this video helpful, please consider giving the video a like and subscribing, as it really helps the YouTube algorithm know that you liked this and other people might find it useful too. And until next time, stay awesome, keep creating, and don't forget to spark the imagination. I'll see you in the next video. Take care.